The sound of the slap echoed across the grand atrium of the Galactic Military Command Academy like a gunshot in a cathedral. 3,000 officers, nobles, dignitaries, and fresh-faced recruits went completely silent. Then they laughed. Commander Vethrak Sul stood at the center of the ceremonial floor, 6 limbs relaxed, his bioluminescent crest flushing a satisfied amber. He was tall, even by Vorathi standards. His scales caught the light of 16 ceremonial chandeliers and threw it back like a challenge. He had just struck a human cadet across the face with an open palm. The cadet had not moved. He had not fallen. He had not cried out. He had simply turned his head back, very slowly, and looked at Vethrak Sul. "Did that hurt, Deathworlder?" Vethrak asked, loud enough for the whole atrium to hear. He was performing. He knew it. The crowd knew it. Or do your primitive nerve endings require a second attempt? More laughter. The kind that lives in gilded halls and feeds on someone else's humiliation. The human cadet's name was Sergeant Elon Marsh. He was 26 years old, unremarkable in height by human standards, with a jaw that looked carved from frustration and dark eyes that had the unsettling quality of seeing everything while revealing nothing. There was a red mark on his left cheek. He had not touched it. He had not said a word. Nothing. Vethrak spread 2 of his upper limbs in theatrical bewilderment. How disappointing. I was told Deathworlders had spirit. I was told the creatures from that poisonous little rock called Earth had something called pride. He moved closer to Elan. His voice dropped just enough to remain a performance. It seems the galaxy was misinformed. Elon Marsh looked at him the way a surgeon looks at a problem. "Sir," Elon said. His voice was flat, controlled. Not the control of someone suppressing fear, the control of someone choosing very deliberately what to do next. "Are you finished?" The laughter shifted pitch. A few alien officers in the upper gallery leaned forward on their viewing rails. They smelled something in the air that they didn't have a word for yet. Vethrak Sul did not recognize it either. That was his final mistake. Finished? He clicked his secondary mandibles together in the Vorathi equivalent of contempt. "I haven't even begun, boy. You are standing in the most prestigious military institution in the known galaxy, wearing a uniform you haven't earned, representing a species that has contributed precisely nothing to the galactic order except a fascinating case study in stubborn mediocrity." He gestured at the crowd, at the senators, at the admirals, at the first-year cadets who were burning the image into their memories. These beings have bled and sacrificed and built this civilization across 10,000 years of warfare and diplomacy. And you tiny, soft, mammalian embarrassment. You show up to my induction ceremony, on my floor, and have the absolute audacity to breathe my air without kneeling. Elan let him finish. Then Elan asked, quietly, "May I have permission to speak freely, Commander?" Vethrak stared at him. He was so amused he almost forgot to be cruel. "By all means, entertain us." "Thank you, sir." Elan took one breath. "I'm going to give you 5 seconds to walk away." The atrium went very still. Somewhere in the upper gallery, a junior diplomat from the Pelthosi collective made a sound that was the alien equivalent of a nervous laugh. Someone else hushed them immediately. Vethrak Sul looked at Elon Marsh for a long moment. Then he turned to the crowd and spread all 6 arms wide, crest burning gold-orange with genuine delight. "Did you hear that? The Deathworlder is giving me a countdown." He looked back at Elan, still smiling with the confidence of a predator who has never once had reason to question itself. "Go ahead, little mammal. Count." 5, Elan said. "Oh, this is wonderful." Or, should I be afraid? My hearts are simply pounding. 3, the smile didn't waver. The crowd was eating it up. 3 senators were already composing messages to their staff about the anecdote they were witnessing. 2, I must say, your commitment to the bit is admirable. Truly. A last act of species 1. What happened next took 5 seconds. The galaxy would spend the next 40 years arguing about those 5 seconds. Elon Marsh's right hand moved. Not fast in the way that looks like a blur in bad holodramas. Fast in the way that makes your brain refuse to process what it just saw. Fast in the way that belongs to something that has trained for so long that the motion no longer lives in the mind at all. It lives in the body, in the bone, in the space below thought. The blade appeared from somewhere at his left hip. A combat knife, standard Terran military issue, matte black, 23 centimeters. Nobody in the atrium had thought to check him for it because nobody had thought to take a human seriously enough to search them properly. The motion was not a slash, it was not a stab. It was a single precisely angled draw cut across the base of Vethrak Sul's neck, between the secondary scale ridge and the primary dorsal plate. the exact place where Vorathi physiology places its main circulatory trunk and its neural relay cluster simultaneously. The one place where a single blade of sufficient length, applied at the correct angle with sufficient force, could do everything at once. Vethrak Sul's crest went black. His body did not collapse dramatically, it simply stopped. Like a machine that had been switched off. His head separated from his body and hit the ceremonial floor of the grand atrium of the Galactic Military Command Academy with a sound that no one present would ever forget for the rest of their lives. It rolled. It came to a stop facing the first row of junior cadets. They did not laugh. 3,000 beings stood in absolute prehistoric silence, the kind of silence that lives below language, below culture, below the civilized veneer of 10,000 years of galactic order. The kind of silence that remembers what it felt like to be something small and edible in the dark. Ellen Marsh straightened up. He held the blade at his side. He looked at the body of Commander Vethrak Sul for exactly 1 second, as though confirming a calculation. Then he looked up at the gallery, at the senators, at the admirals, at the 2 Vorathi honor guards who were standing 15 meters away with weapons they had not yet raised because their nervous systems were still catching up to a reality that made no sense. "I gave him 5 seconds, Ellen said. Nobody moved. "I gave him 5 seconds, he said again, louder this time, not angry, not afraid. Just making sure the record was clear. Then the atrium erupted. The holding cell beneath the academy was designed for alien physiologies, which meant the bench was the wrong height, the gravity was slightly off, and the light was a color that humans found deeply unpleasant. Elan sat on the floor instead. He had cleaned the blade with the inside of his sleeve and folded his hands in his lap. He had been sitting there for 37 minutes when the door opened. The being who walked in was not security. She was a Pelthosi, tall, silver-skinned, with the kind of still face that belongs to someone who has survived an enormous amount of politics. She wore no rank insignia. That meant she outranked everyone who did. "Sergeant Marsh," she said. She sat down on the wrong height bench and looked at him with 4 pale eyes that gave nothing away. "My name is Liaison Director Sarah Veln. I represent the Joint Diplomatic Council." "I know who you are," Elan said. That gave her a small pause. "Do you? You were in the upper gallery, 3rd seat from the left in the council box. You were the only one in the room who didn't flinch." She looked at him for a moment. "You were watching the gallery." "I was watching everything," he said. "I've been watching everything since I walked in this morning." Another pause. Longer this time. "You understand," she said carefully, "that what you did today has triggered a Class 1 diplomatic incident. Commander Vethrak Sul was not simply an officer. He was the 3rd son of the Sul Dominion's ruling family. He had 7 Senate seats attached to his bloodline. His death in this room in front of this audience has already been transmitted to 17 systems. The Vorathi High Command is convening an emergency session. There are warships being repositioned as we speak." Aelin nodded slowly. "I know. You knew this would happen." It was not a question. He looked at her. "Yes." Sarah Veln leaned forward, very slightly. "Then I need you to explain something to me, Sergeant, and I need you to be very honest. Because right now the consensus in this building is that you are either the most reckless being in the galaxy, or you are something else entirely." She let the silence sit for a moment. "Which is it?" Elan looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he looked back at her. "You're asking the wrong question," he said. "The question isn't what I am. The question is what happens next. And I think you already know the answer, which is why you came down here alone, instead of with security." Sarah Veln did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was very quiet. "What does happen next, Sergeant Marsh?" "The Vorathi file a formal death claim. They demand extradition. The Council debates it for 72 hours and then agrees to a tribunal, because that's the diplomatic play that keeps the peace." He tilted his head slightly. "Then the tribunal reviews the incident, and when they review the incident, they pull the full record, all of it, not just what happened in the atrium today." Something shifted in Sarah Veln's expression, just barely. "Just enough." "All of it?" Elaine said again, watching her. "Including the part that your office has been sitting on for 14 months. The silence was different now. It had weight and edges, and a specific kind of fear that does not come from physical danger. "I don't know what you're referring to," Sarah Veln said. Elin Marsh smiled for the first time. It was not a warm smile. "Yes, you do." He reached into the inside pocket of his uniform jacket. Sarah Veln's hand moved toward her wrist, but Ellen was already holding out a small data chip between 2 fingers, completely casual, completely still. "This was given to me 11 days ago by a being who is now dead," Elan said. "Officially, she died in a transit accident in the Keth corridor. Unofficially, she was the Academy's head of xenopsychological evaluation, and she had spent 8 years collecting evidence of something that the Diplomatic Council, the Vorathi High Command, and 4 other galactic powers have been coordinating to keep buried. He held the chip up to the light. Vethrek Sul wasn't just an arrogant aristocrat with a cruelty habit. He was the operational face of a program that has been running for 31 years, Director. Inside this academy, using cadets, Sarah Veln had gone very still. Human cadets, Elan said, specifically. The words landed like stones in still water. You're not here to negotiate my surrender, Elan said quietly. You're here to find out how much I know before you decide what to do with me. He set the data chip on the floor between them. That's a copy, he said. There are others, dispersed, keyed to my biometrics and to a 48-hour dead man protocol that will transmit to every independent news network in the Corps if I miss a check-in. He folded his hands in his lap again. So here is what I suggest, Director. I suggest we have a very different conversation than the one you came in here planning to have. I suggest you tell me how deep this goes. And I suggest you start with the name of whoever ordered the evaluation program in the first place. Sarah Veln looked at him for a long time. If what you're implying is true, she said slowly, and I am not confirming anything, then you have no idea what you've walked into. The beings connected to this program are not politicians, Sergeant. They are not admirals. They are the architecture. They are the reason the galaxy looks the way it looks. I know, Elan said. You would be making enemies that no human has ever survived making. I know that too. Then why? She asked. And for a moment, the director of the Joint Diplomatic Council sounded genuinely, honestly bewildered. Why do this? Why now? Why this way? You are one man, one human soldier. Why walk into the most politically dangerous room in the galaxy and detonate it? Elan Marsh picked the data chip back up and held it loosely in his palm. He looked at it for a moment. When he looked up, his dark eyes held something that Sarah Veln had not seen in 30 years of interstellar diplomacy. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was patience. The deep, geological patience of something that has been waiting for exactly the right moment for a very, very long time. Because, Elan said quietly, they've been doing this to us for 31 years, and they did it because they believed we were too primitive, too disorganized, and too weak to ever figure it out. He closed his fingers around the chip. They were wrong about us. They have always been wrong about us. A pause. I'm going to make sure the whole galaxy understands that. Starting today, Sarah Veln opened her mouth to respond. The lights went out. Every light in the detention level cut simultaneously. Not a flicker, not a failure, a cut. Precise, coordinated. In the darkness, Sarah Veln heard a sound she did not recognize. A soft sound. A familiar sound to anyone who had spent time in the right kinds of dangerous places. It was the sound of a door being opened from the outside by someone who knew the lock code. Then a second sound. Closer. Elan Marsh, moving in absolute silence. Then a voice from the doorway speaking in low, clipped English. Marsh, we've got maybe 90 seconds. The data is already transmitting. They know. How many? Elan asked. His voice came from the wrong place. He had moved without a sound. 6 in the corridor. 2 more on the stairs. And Marsh? A pause. The ship is here. She came herself. Complete silence from Elan's direction for exactly 1 second. Of course she did, he said. Who is that? Sarah Veln asked, her voice tight. Who came? Who are you talking about? The lights came back on. The cell was empty. Elan Marsh was gone. The data chip was gone. On the floor where he had been sitting, scratched into the composite material with the tip of a blade, was a single line. Sarah Veln crouched down and read it. She read it twice. Then she stood up very slowly, turned to the open door, and said nothing for a long time, because the line on the floor was a name she had not heard spoken aloud in 11 years, a name that was supposed to be dead, a name that changed everything she thought she knew about what humanity had been doing in the dark for 31 years while the galaxy laughed at them. The name on the floor was Covenant. That was all. 1 word, 8 letters, scratched into Academy composite flooring with the tip of a combat blade, in the steady hand of a man who had known exactly what he was doing when he wrote it. Sarah Veln stood in the empty cell for 43 seconds before she trusted herself to walk. Covenant was not a person. It was not a ship. It was not a code name for an operation. It was something older than all 3, and considerably more dangerous than any of them. Covenant was the name given, in the classified archives of the Joint Diplomatic Council, to an agreement signed 31 years ago in secret by 7 of the galaxy's dominant powers. An agreement that was never supposed to be spoken of, An agreement whose existence had been scrubbed, buried, and in 3 documented cases killed for. An agreement whose central subject was humanity, specifically, what to do about it. She walked out of the detention level without speaking to anyone. She took the private corridor to the council transport bay. She did not look at the 2 security officers who fell into step behind her. She did not respond when the academy's senior administrator called her name across the bay floor. She had 37 minutes before the Vorathi delegation's shuttle landed. She needed to use them. 3 kilometers above the academy, in a vessel that did not appear on any registered traffic log, Elin Marsh sat in the co-pilot seat and watched the city shrink below him. The ship was a converted deep survey runner, civilian registry, with a hull that had been modified in ways that no civilian had any business understanding. It was fast, quiet, and looked boring from the outside. It was called the Meridian Fault, which Ellen had always thought was either a navigation joke or a philosophy, depending on who was flying. Beside him in the pilot's seat was the reason he had paused for 1 full second when he heard the name. Her name was Commander Tova Reese, formerly of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, officially deceased, killed in the collapse of Forward Station Harrow 9 years ago, along with 41 other members of her crew. She was 44 years old, with close-cropped gray hair, and the kind of face that had stopped apologizing for itself a long time ago. She had a scar running from her left temple to the corner of her jaw that she never explained, and nobody who knew her well ever asked about. She was the most dangerous human being Ellen Marsh had ever met, which was a sentence with a very high bar. "You could have warned me you were going to take his head," Tova said. She was not looking at him. Her eyes were on the traffic grid. "Would it have changed anything?" "No. But I would have appreciated the professional courtesy." Elan looked at the city below them. The Academy's grand atrium was visible from this altitude, its glass roof catching the afternoon sun. He could not see the ceremonial floor from here. He was glad. "She read the name," he said. "Yes. How long before she makes a move?" "Depends on which way she falls." Tova adjusted their heading by 2 degrees, smooth and automatic, the way pilots do things they've done 10,000 times. Sarah Veln has been navigating Covenant's shadow for her entire career. She knows the name means the whole architecture. If she's smart, she runs toward it and tries to get ahead of what's coming. If she's scared, she runs away from it and becomes irrelevant in about 6 hours. A pause. "She struck me as smart. She struck me as someone who already knows more than she let on," Elan said. "That's the same thing in her line of work." From the rear compartment, footsteps. Then a second person dropped into the seat behind them. He was younger than Aelin by 3 years, with a slightly broken nose and the easy physicality of someone who had spent his formative years doing things that were illegal in most systems. His name was Corporal Davi Oren, and he had been the voice in the doorway. 6 hostiles, 0 casualties, Davi said. He sounded faintly disappointed. They were wearing Academy security badges, but 2 of them had Vorathi-patterned subdermal comms. "Interesting. Sul's people," Elan said. "His personal security detail, I'm guessing. Stationed inside the Academy ahead of the ceremony. Someone brought them in. Someone with Academy access and Vorathi connections," Tova said. She let that sit for a moment. "Which brings us back to the program." The program. 31 years old. Hidden in the administrative bowels of the most respected military institution in the known galaxy. On paper, it was a xenopsychological study. A long-term academic evaluation of human adaptability, stress response, and threat assessment capability under controlled conditions. Legitimate research, approved and funded by the Academy's Board of Sciences. In practice, it was something considerably colder. The human cadets admitted to the Academy over those 31 years, 112 of them across 9 graduating cycles, had been selected by criteria that had nothing to do with their applications. They had been selected because they fit a profile. A profile built not to find the best human soldiers, but to find the most dangerous ones. The ones with the highest capability ceiling. The ones who, under sufficient pressure, sufficient humiliation, and sufficient exposure to the full contempt of galactic civilization, might eventually do something that proved the hypothesis. The hypothesis, as written in the founding documents of Covenant, was simple. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not a Deathworlder curiosity. Humanity was a category of threat that the galaxy had never encountered before, and the 7 signatory powers of Covenant had spent 31 years trying to understand exactly how dangerous it was before deciding what to do about it. They had used the Academy as their laboratory. They had used human cadets as their test subjects. And they had used Vethrak Sul again and again across 3 graduating cycles as the instrument of applied pressure. He had not known about Covenant, he had simply been useful. A cruelly gifted bully with the right bloodline, the right posting, and the complete conviction that humans were beneath him. He had not needed to know what he was participating in, he had done it for free, out of genuine belief. That was, Elan had always thought, the most honest thing about the whole program. They got what they were looking for, Davy said, from behind them. Didn't they? It was not quite a question. They got data, Elan said. They got 31 years of it. What they did with it is the part that matters. Tova said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, they built a contingency. The words settled into the cabin like smoke. Show him, Elan said. Tova reached forward and brought up a holographic display above the instrument console. It was a document. Long, dense, formatted in the diplomatic notation of the Joint Council. The header was classified at a level that most admirals never encountered in their careers. Davy leaned forward and read the first line. Then he sat back very slowly. When did you get this? He asked. The same source as the chip, Elan said. The Academy's Xenopsychological Evaluator. She had been sitting on it for 3 years before she reached out to us. She was afraid. She had every right to be. They killed her, Davy said. 11 days ago. She knew they were coming. She got us everything she had first. Alan looked at the document hanging in the air between them. Read the section titled Threshold Parameters. Davy read it. When he finished, he said nothing for a long time. The Threshold Parameters section of the Covenant contingency document was 4 pages long. It described, in the precise and bloodless language of interstellar strategic planning, the conditions under which the 7 signatory powers had agreed to act in concert against humanity, not to contain it, not to negotiate with it, not to impose sanctions or restrictions or diplomatic pressure, to eliminate it. The threshold was defined by a series of escalating indicators, military capability benchmarks, psychological profile aggregates, threat assessment scores compiled from the Academy's research program. If humanity crossed enough of those benchmarks simultaneously, if enough data points aligned in enough of the right ways, the contingency activated automatically. No vote required, no council debate, no warning. The document had been drafted 31 years ago. It had been updated 6 times since. The most recent update was dated 14 months ago. Every single threshold indicator had been marked. Marked, Davi said very carefully. As in, we already crossed them. As in, humanity crossed them. Crossed them, exceeded them, and in 3 categories, exceeded them by margins that apparently required the creation of new measurement criteria. Ellen reached out and tapped the display. According to their own evaluation, we hit the final threshold 14 months ago. That is why Veln's office has been sitting on this for 14 months. Because 14 months ago, the Covenant contingency became active. The cabin was very quiet. So why hasn't it happened? Davy asked. Because of a disagreement, Tova said. She had not looked away from the traffic grid. 2 of the 7 signatories refused to ratify the activation. They demanded a verification review. The other 5 agreed to a 90-day delay, which became a 14-month delay because the verification review kept producing results they didn't like. Results like what? Results like the fact that the threshold indicators don't measure what they were designed to measure, Elan said. The program was built on a false assumption. The assumption that human dangerousness is an instinctive response, something biological, something that could be quantified by pushing humans hard enough and measuring how they broke. He paused. They were measuring the wrong thing. For 31 years. Davy looked at him. Then what should they have been measuring? Helen looked out at the sky above the city. The Vorathi delegation shuttle was visible now, a long dark shape descending through the upper atmosphere, its running lights blinking in the clean afternoon air. Cooperation, he said. The words sat there. They were so focused on what a human would do when pushed far enough alone, he said, that they never once looked at what humans were doing together, quietly, over decades, while everyone in the galaxy was busy watching us get humiliated in rooms like that atrium and congratulating themselves on how superior they were. He looked at Tova. Tell him the number. Tova said, 47. Davi waited. 47 humans, Tova said, currently embedded at significant positions across the galactic infrastructure, not placed, not assigned, not inserted by any official Terran authority, self-directed, independent, connected to each other through a network that has no formal name and no central command structure, because it doesn't need one, because the people in it are human, and humans don't need to be told what to do when they understand what needs doing. She finally looked away from the grid and turned to face them both. I am one of them, she said. Elin is one of them. The xenopsychological evaluator who died 11 days ago was one of them. We have been inside the Covenant architecture for 9 years. We have people in the Council's administrative staff. We have people in 2 of the 7 signatory governments. We have people in the Varathi High Command itself. She said it the way she said everything, flat, direct, like reading coordinates. We have known about the contingency document for 3 years. We have known about the threshold activation for 14 months. And we have spent 14 months doing exactly one thing, making sure that when it came apart, Ilan said, it came apart in public. Davi was silent for a long moment. Today, he finally said, you planned today for 14 months. We planned today for 9 years, Ilan said. Today was just the day. Vethrak Sul was the activation key, yes. The moment his death entered the public record, the dead man protocols triggered automatically across every node in our network. Right now, in real time, copies of the Covenant document are being delivered to 43 independent journalists, 11 neutral governments, and the 3 members of the Joint Council who were never signatories and have spent 30 years being kept deliberately ignorant of its existence. He let that land. The galaxy is going to spend the next 72 hours learning what was planned for us. All of it, in detail, from primary sources. Davy pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes for a moment. Then he dropped them. They're going to say you murdered him, Davi said. Sul. They're going to call it an assassination. They're going to use it to discredit everything. Let them, Ilan said. Ilan, let them try, Ellen said. And his voice had the quality it had in the atrium, that flat, deliberate, chosen very carefully quality. He struck me in front of 3,000 witnesses and laughed while the crowd joined in. I gave him 5 seconds and he spent them mocking me. Whatever they call it, every being in that room saw exactly what happened, and every being in that room is going to spend the rest of their life quietly, privately understanding that the human did not beg, did not cry, did not run a beat, and that the human won. The Varathi shuttle touched down on the Academy landing platform below them. Its ramp descended, uniformed figures emerged, moving fast, moving with the rigid urgency of people who had received extremely bad news and were not yet sure how bad. Ilan watched them. They built a program to measure how dangerous we are, he said. They designed tests. They applied pressure. They humiliated our people in front of audiences for 31 years and called it science. His voice did not rise. It never rose. And after all of that, after 31 years of data collection, they still got it wrong. They measured our breaking points. They should have been measuring our patience. Tova turned back to the controls. We need to be out of this corridor in 4 minutes. The Varathi will have traffic authority locked down in 5. Go, Ilan said. The Meridian Fault's engines shifted pitch. The city began to fall away. Below them, in the Academy, in the Council chambers, in 17 systems where the first fragments of the Covenant document were already arriving in the inboxes of people who had been lied to for 3 decades, the galaxy was beginning to understand something it had never once considered. The humans had known, not all of them, not officially, not through any government or military command or diplomatic authority, but 47 human beings, operating independently, connected by nothing more formal than trust and a shared comprehension of what was at stake, had spent 9 years inside the machine that was built to destroy their species. Not to sabotage it, not to blow it up from the inside, to document it. Every meeting, every update, every cold, bureaucratic threshold assessment, every conversation in which the fate of 8 billion people was discussed in the language of strategic planning by beings who had never once, not once in 31 years, considered the possibility that they were being watched. They thought we were primitive, Davy said quietly. He was looking out the viewport at the sky opening up around them, the blue deepening toward black at the edges as the ship climbed. They thought we were reactive, emotional, short-sighted. Yes, Elan said. They had no idea that the whole time they were running a program to study us, we were running a program to study them. No, Elan said. They had no idea at all. The stars appeared, one by one, and then all at once, the way they always do when you clear atmosphere. The way that never gets ordinary no matter how many times you see it. Elan Marsh looked at them for a moment. He thought about the red mark on his cheek, already fading. He thought about the atrium floor, cold and white under the ceremonial lights. He thought about a woman who had died in a corridor in the Keth system 11 days ago, alone, because she had believed that the truth was worth more than her safety. He thought about 31 years of human cadets standing in rooms like that atrium, absorbing contempt with straight backs and still faces, representing a species that the galaxy had decided, in a classified document, to erase. He thought about patience, the deep, geological, load-bearing kind. The kind that does not ask for acknowledgement, the kind that does not need the crowd to stop laughing, the kind that simply waits, and works, and watches, and waits some more, until the moment is exactly right, until a commander raises his hand in a gilded hall, in front of 3,000 witnesses, in front of cameras that transmit to 17 systems, and strikes the wrong human across the face. They spent 31 years asking how dangerous we were, Elan said. He was not speaking to Davi or to Tova. He was speaking to no one in particular, or perhaps to the stars. They should have asked a different question. The meridian fault broke from the gravity well cleanly and ran for open space. Behind them, the galaxy was already burning with the answer. The question they should have asked was not how dangerous humanity was. The question was how long humanity had been waiting. The answer was longer than anyone had thought to measure, and they were only just getting started.